I'm back filling in after that last quick reading on Sarah Huckabee, and I went back to her maiden name. What a quaint concept. All right. So what I'm interested in this reading is Trump going out to that rally. Cleveland? Was it Cleveland, Ohio, I think? And I just thought, God, there's so much going on with what he said there. And Pence's role in speaking there. So I'm going to do a couple of smaller readings around what are the lessons in there, what can we learn from where Trump's going next from that rally, because it was different from the Michigan rally, totally different, and it was all about nailing his supporters down with the Second Amendment. So what's Trump's game with the NRA? He's basically said to the NRA, I'm your man, after waffling on after the Parkland shooting. And now we will see. So Trump. First of all, I think Trump and his base. Oh, what fell out? The death card. All right. So Trump and his base and this thing about the Second Amendment, there was no sort of hesitation about it. It was like, out there, you've got to keep your guns. I'm your man to keep your guns. People want to take your guns. I'm not going to take your guns. I'm your guy. So it's a message of death. That could be another interpretation of the death card. But we have to read the tarot more symbolically. I think, despite the fact it was well received, what Trump doesn't get in politics, because he's never had to get it in his family business. This is a guy who's never even worked in a corporation at any level, at low levels, middle levels, or even top levels. He's only ever run the family shop, right? So what he doesn't get about politics is by saying that stuff that he said at that rally, he's put off the 70% of Americans who want some sort of sensible gun reform. So that line is not going to work for him. Oh, that's interesting. I mean, superficially, obviously, it's going to get him cheers on the day, but it's not going to work for him as President of the United States going into these midterms. So behind that, if you like, or the recent past, you wouldn't see him necessarily as this worldly figure, but it is the Two of Wands in the sense of a polarity, or in Trump's case, maybe bipolar. I might be overreading here, dear viewers. By leaping to that conclusion. But what I think it means in this context is, before he hadn't completely sided with the NRA and the whole gun thing, he'd waffled a bit. He was hedging his bets both ways. So in that sense, he was actually a bit more reasonable. You know, immediately after the shooting, even though his actual ideas were stupid, with just get more guns into school and everything will be fine, it was nonetheless not completely all the way with the NRA as this has been. He's rolling the dice with this. He's tempting fate, and it will be his destiny, but this is right under the death card. On top of his reading in relation to the gun stuff, the Queen of Wands. So an older woman This could be Nancy Pelosi. It's an older woman who will speak counter to his death cult sort of manifestations now. So an older woman will impress with her arguments. It could also be an older mother, i.e. one of the children who was slain at one of the schools, could go back as far as Sandy Hook. So it could be the archetypal mother. It could be a mother's organisation that gets formed and speaks out. Does anyone know if the one already exists in terms of parents of kids who are gunned down in schools? I'm sure there must be something. But this is female. Or it could be a political woman speaking out. He is creating, famously, a rod for his own back. It's actually not going to work. I find that very interesting. All right, now the second thing I wanted to know about there was Pence. Pence is now speaking at these rallies. I couldn't bear to actually listen to them speaking, but apparently he does speak, and he's speaking at these rallies. Now, what's that about? Pence at these rallies. Pence speaking. Group work and black money. Paying people what they do for their work. I'm wondering how deeply in bed with the NRA personally is Mike Pence. I think this is Pence and Trump and a third party, not a third person, a third party. What else is happening? Oh, he should perhaps have a little thicky poo too. All right, what have we got here? So in the recent past, he's been out in the cold, meaning he's invisible. We all know that. So he wasn't causing waves, right? But he's been doing some group work behind the scenes, and he now has a cohort of supporters. This is not a huge leap, as you guys will know who follow this stuff. A lot of Republicans have supported the Trump nonsense, hoping for a Pence president. He's now unzipping the pants and revealing the phallic wonder, which is the Ace of Wands, figuratively speaking, his big stick. And I think that he's quietly gone about making sure he has some numbers on his side, and he is going to make a play. I also think that because he's got the Three of Wands, commerce, trade, doing business, this is a business transaction. I think it involves other Republicans and very specifically the NRA. What's going to be the outcome for that? Wow! Trump's going to find out and not be happy. Here's the Emperor. So, what happens then? I'm going to have to draw another card. Oh! The World. End of a cycle. Now I have to think about this, viewers. Does that mean the end of a cycle and Pence steps up to become the Emperor, so to speak? This is a Pence reading. Or is it that the world thinks, even though Pence is a right-wing evangelical flat earther, doesn't believe in science and all of that, they could deal with him better than Trump? I don't want to say, Well, that makes it clearer. As an extra card of outcome, he gets the Fool. So, okay, here's what I think is happening with this, to recap. I think he's been working behind the scenes, securing support, having been out in the cold and invisible. So he's felt he's got the numbers. He now wants to make a play. And he is speaking about that more openly. When I say openly, behind the scenes. By him speaking at these rallies too, it's getting Trump's base used to Pence. They're seeing Trump and Pence. So he's become a bit more real as the vice president and the guy who could be president. And if he keeps going out and saying Second Amendment, yeah, guns, he's hoping they will trust him if he gets the job through a caretaker capacity. If something awful should happen to the toddler. So I think he's working the base. He's got his numbers. He's also been talking overseas. I missed this element the first time around because I was a bit surprised to see this card. There's international backing and international conversations about this, and that's borne out by the World card. He's been very busy. He's been on the blower. And I'm going to go with my second interpretation here. He's hoping to become the emperor, but it's a foolish endeavour, and he will walk off the cliff with that particular endeavour. Oh my God. I'm going to do now just a very quick one on, will the Trump base accept Pence? So, if Trump should be impeached, if he has a heart attack, if he's just shunted quietly sideways, if he walks away, these are all viable scenarios that we as readers and you as viewers and citizens wrestle with every day. But something's likely to give. The only way Pence will get in, we know, is if Donald folds. So my question now is, will the base accept Pence? Will the base accept Pence? I'm just going to do a 4-carder on this and see what happens. Oh, that's 4 cards. Stop there. Okay. Over the top, Ace of Swords, the message, you know, the exciting message of truth, justice, and the American way, and that includes being able to have 87 guns and not worrying if the 2-year-old shoots the 4-year-old or the 4-year-old shoots the 6-year-old or any of that real life stuff. We don't want to be bothered with that. We just want to speak about what it means to be American in that evangelical heartland. But his base isn't all evangelicals either. A lot of evangelicals are in his base, but his base is also workers who aren't that religious. So he's plying the message. He's speaking to that, right? It's exactly that same thing. He's now speaking out, whereas he didn't. The Lovers, we're not talking personal here, we're talking now in the current scenario, the base will accept it. But when it goes further out, the Queen of Swords, he's got the Ace of Swords and the Queen of Swords. Justice will interfere with this fantasy. I see this as a figure of justice. And I think he is going to get caught up in all the hullabaloo. So even though on the one hand the base, it seems, would rather have Pence than the Democrats, they're not immediately going to, even those who were Democrat, they're not immediately going to swing back and vote Democrat, but they may not vote or become progressively disillusioned. But in any event, it's justice that's going to rule this out. That's how I see it on that subject, guys. I'd like to say one more thing before I go. About veterans. There are a few veterans who follow this channel, and I thank you for that. And when I say things, because it's a subject close to my heart, my dad was in the Second World War and was actually in a war hospital for 5 years when I was very young. And so I would go to this war hospital, 3 or 4 times a week for years and years and years. So I saw a lot of injured vets. And I think that's where my sort of real feelings for this issue came from. Now, there are problems with how vets are looked after anywhere, including Australia. They tend to be very good, this might be the same as America, with physical injuries, and paying the medical bills for physical stuff. They're not so good with the psychological long-term stuff. There's not enough support. But also, the point I want to make here in this is the answer is not to privatise vet affairs. Please don't anyone think I'm saying because there's waiting lists for issues and stuff, go with that idea of privatising. Please don't privatise vet affairs. And there would be vulture companies out there who would love to get their hands on a huge portfolio like vet affairs. Please don't. It must be administered by the government so it is accountable. But it needs to be improved. So that's what I think about vet affairs. Thank you all for listening. See you next time.